17 games. Only 17 tournament games of Terran vs Zerg have been played on Ruset Station, one of the new maps so far. So I decided to look it up. It turns out the new map pool, it's been around since the 29th of September. So for about a month and a half so far, this map has been playable. And only 17 tournament games of Terran vs Zerg have been played. I think that's gotta be one of the absolute lowest ratings as far as like map pickability goes. I don't even think that's a word. Anyways, I think that's gonna be one of the lowest pick rates at the very least when it comes to StarCraft 2 maps that we've ever had. Anyways, spawning right here in the bottom left-hand corner of it. It's gonna be game number 1 in our best of 3 series for the day. Playing with the blue Terran SCVs, we have the world champion of StarCraft 2, and he goes by the name of Oliveira. His opponent in the opposite corner, playing with the red Zerg drones. He's from Germany, he's one of the very best from Europe, and he goes by the name of Lambo. I've been trying to find games on this map. I've got a feeling there's gotta be at least a couple of you that are watching this video and that may have accidentally missed one of my previous uploads in the past, right? Because every single one of you watches every single one of my videos from start to finish, right? Obviously. I can imagine that there's at the very least a bunch of you watching this that have never seen a game on Ruset Station before. Alright, so this map has a very funky layout compared to what we have, well, come to assume as like the established standard in StarCraft 2. It's just got a different expansion pattern. The rush distance is significantly longer. So this Reaper coming across the map, the Zerglings were already waiting. Look at the Queen, it's already out at this point. Normally that Reaper quite literally gets like an additional 8 to 10 seconds or so that it gets to dance with those Zerglings until the Queen pops out. So first off, first thing to note is that the rush distance, at the very least as far as the ground distance goes, is very, very long. Secondly, there's an in-base expansion. That's weird. There's a very large wall over here with a bunch of debris that can be destroyed, and then there's a mineral wall over here too. It's a pretty safe expansion to take, and that's why we see Lambo really rushing it out. So as a matter of fact, he has opened up completely gasless. Next up, the expansion patterns after this in the games that I did see on this map are all a little bit funky. And in my mind, I mean, maybe this is a little bit of Zerg bias coming in, who knows, but in my mind, it feels like it's a little bit easier for Terran to take all of these bases on the left side of the map, the very least in this particular spawn location, because there's not that many angles for the Zerg player to be attacking in from. So, technically speaking, of course, you can be coming in from the right side, but you have to bring drones to mine out your opponent's minerals here, which is just very, very tricky. That being said, apparently in the 17 games that have been played on this map in Terran vs Zerg so far, only 8 of them did go in favor of Terran. So I guess Zerg has had a very slight advantage of just a single game. Those stats though are, yeah, such a small sample size that it's really difficult to draw conclusions. Obviously with this new map pool in StarCraft 2, we now for the very first time have 9 maps. So that means in a best of 3 series, everybody gets, well, in a best of 5 and in a best of 7 too, everybody gets 1 additional veto, right? So you get to veto 1 additional map. And I guess with just the weirdness of Ruset Station, players have been neglecting it a little bit. This is also an interesting start here though for Oliveira. So he's opened up with, yeah, quick siege tanks here. Now there's a medevac coming up. We can certainly ferry some more units across the map. Ah! Alright, so there's a lot of space here behind the natural expansion, which again, weird, but it does allow for a nice place over here for Oliveira to do a marine siege tank play. Yeah, not bad at all. Medevac taking a lot of damage. I mean, that second medevac is coming across, come on. Yeah, that boost has already been utilized. It's gonna take a while until those units finally arrive. Siege tank, don't die. Okay. Alright. Anyway, it did end up staying alive for now, but no queens have fallen yet. This seems like a cute little move from Oliveira, but I wonder if maybe he should have waited until that second medevac was at the very least a little bit closer by. Because even though it felt like it was flying across the map quite quickly, I mean, we're gonna start targeting a bunch of queens now. Corrosive Biles. Alright, well at the very least he's gonna be able to get rid of one of the tanks. That super low HP one from earlier now has 5 committed kills. Oh, okay. He's gonna be able to pick up and get on out of there. This stuff right over here, right? It's fantastic as a viewer. I really enjoy it as a caster, but as a player, it's just another puzzle that you need to solve. And I guess that's the reason why a lot of players are like, you know what, Ruset Station, this game is complex enough as it is. I am just not gonna bother, right? Maybe as time goes on, we will see the map a little bit more frequently. I would not be surprised at all, but there's so much to learn with the new maps, with the new ladder map pool, that being forced to play specific strategies on just one map out of 9, when you could just veto it instead, is, yeah, just a bit difficult, right? You have to commit a lot of time and effort into getting it all done. But anyways, we have 2 additional command centers. Okay. Huh. So Oliveira going for, well, a quick natural, a relatively late 3rd, but now also, again, a very quick 4th on the back of it. So all things considered, I think we're in a relatively, quote-unquote, normal spot, despite this early game of his. So, yeah, I'm not sure if I loved the push right there, but it was fun to watch for sure. I just don't think it was particularly effective. Lambo, in the meantime, creeping up the entire right side of the map, already heading on over to a 4th hatch himself as well. 2 Liberators in the same moment, also moving in the top left-hand corner. That's a funny one as well. Not really something you would expect at this point. It's gonna be what seems to be a Mutaling Bane Roach or something along those lines. Yeah, here from the Zerg. Strange little unit composition, but I definitely agree that having a pack of mutas, I guess a swarm of mutas is a better group for it. Group name at the very least. I would imagine it's not a bad choice against all of the shenanigans that Oliveira is throwing at Lambo here so far. Mutas are going to be available here very soon. Even Corruptors would not be a bad choice. Still though, yeah, Corrosive Balls are going to finally be able to get rid of that hero siege tank from the early game. 8 drones, though, have now gone down to all of this harassment. 2nd Liberator now joins into the main base, too, because the drones already were pulled away. We have the medevac drop continuing on the right side of the map. God, this is so chaotic. Especially somebody like Lambo. Lambo is a very calculated Zerg. He, generally speaking, doesn't really play a very fancy style. I've got a feeling that he is feeling mighty uncomfortable in games like this. He likes games to be as little scrappy as, like, he doesn't like scrappy games very much, at least in my mind, you know? He's very much so like a spreadsheet guy who aims for efficiency, and this is the opposite of efficiency. This is, yeah, him being forced to react and play a game that goes well, don't get me wrong, this has been going really smoothly so far, but it could have been a lot smoother as well, as far as, like, that base defense goes. Anyhow, ultimately, where are we at? Oliveira is finding himself at a 40 supply deficit, because despite the fact that he has killed 20 drones, he also threw a lot of units at the opponent, and he did slow down his own economy quite a bit, especially when it came to that 3rd command center. So the 4th base is maybe going to help out in that department quite easily, or quite nicely, but yeah, it's difficult for Zerg to push in here with a ground-based army. The thing is, we now do have mutas out. 9 mutas is nothing really to be underestimating. Bailing speed, though, relatively late. +2/+2 coming up. I feel like this is a situation where you can't really go for like a 2-2 Ling Bane timing. I don't think that's really a great option. Especially on this map, it just doesn't really line up. So instead, I wouldn't mind seeing maybe like an infestation pit right here for Lambo and go into a nice and quick hive. Look at that beautiful effect right over here on that. What do I don't know. This Nexus? This pyramid? I think this proves again that the pyramids indeed were built by the aliens, right? In this particular case, I guess it's the Protoss. Anyways, get out of here, Sneferu. Nobody, but no, it was the Protoss. We know for a fact that it was. Alrighty, Muta's going in. Killing 1 SCV. Nothing to write home about, but we do have a transition right now as well towards the Widow Mines. So yeah, there's still 3 siege tanks available, but it seems like the age of the siege tank, maybe as like a backbone, it's still around, but it's mostly over at this point. We're gonna be going into Thors, Medevacs, Widow Mines, Marines, the whole shebang. And one thing I do really like right here for Oliveira is the 2-2 upgrades. Those are, considering the game, actually quite nice and early here. I don't know if I love the position of them, because in my mind, this is one of those spots that the mutas can dive and just kill. Like, if they kill the engineering base and they shut them down before upgrades finish up, that would be an absolute disaster here for the Terran. But this is a relatively low commitment here to mutas, right? So it's 11 at this point. There's a couple more being sprinkled in, but it's not like we have like 30 mutas going around the map here already. Okay. Do you want to take out these debris yourself? I guess you do. But it is a little bit tricky. Anyways, Lambo may just be able to catch some of this Terran army off guard. Not really a location where you would expect a fight to take place. I love that move though there by Lambo, because This is a big move out right here from Oliveira, and slowing this down in whatever way he can is going to be benefiting him. So 2-2 is done right now for both players. Yeah, Oliveira's like, bro, you want to fight over here? Let's go. Don't fight it over there. You definitely don't want to fight it over there. That would be a bit of a Diamond League move. I've been doing a lot of StarCraft 2 coaching over the years. Patience is one of the things that's very critical in a game of StarCraft. As Zerg in this location. I mean, he does decide to dive on this army right now off creep. Little bit risky, and honestly, it seems a bit unnecessary. He does get a decent trade right there in the end, but forced to back off right now as well. Apparently, though, he's feeling confident with the way that went, because he fires up 3-3 together with Adrenal Glands. So apparently, we don't need all of the resources to be spent on reinforcing units. But general rule of thumb as Zerg is to engage on creep whenever possible. So when the Terran's coming towards you, let him come. Just let him come, let him step onto the creep, so your, well, army is gonna have a much easier time swarming all over them. Alright, here's the addition of the missile turrets. We're gonna add on 3 of them. I've got a feeling that is also, once again, not the most optimal way to do it, but it's gonna be able to solve the problem that Oliveira wants solving at this point. Big Widowmine hit. Not bad whatsoever. Do we have a detector nearby? I mean, there are overseers, but they're on the Mutalis control group, it looks like. We're once again gonna try and fight this off creep. I mean, the Widowmines have now been dealt with. Not in love with these moves, though, from Lambo, if I'm being honest with you. I mean, it's working out because he pulls back in time. But it does seem unnecessarily risky. So, yeah, he fires up a ton of additional Zerglings here. I wouldn't mind even seeing, like, an Ultralisk Cavern here. I feel like Ultras... Yeah, we have an Ultralisk Cavern. Okay. I feel like that would not be a bad choice. Couple Infestors coming up. Yeah. All of these decisions are indeed the right ones. In the meantime, by the way, we do have a 5th command center now finishing up as well over at the 9 o'clock position on this map. So Oliveira is continuing building up his economy. It is certainly time for us to make that transition right now towards ghosts as well, though. So up to this point, he hasn't really seen any unit that requires ghosts. Obviously, there have been no Vipers or, well, no Lurkers, anything like that. But against Ultras... Against Infestors, I've got a feeling you basically need them. There are alternatives, but it is going to make it a whole lot more difficult. Especially if we just don't have a Ghost Academy at all. I understand not making any ghosts yet, but not having the potential to transition towards them either does seem a little silly. Especially if we add on even more command centers. Like, this is Terran being maxed out, and this is where they start aiming for, like, you know, that dozen or so orbital commands that they like to have. I feel like you want to have a Ghost Academy at the very least. Unless I've completely missed it, but I don't think it's there. Sometimes I'm just blind as a bat when it comes to those sorts of things. Anyways, here we go. Fungal Growth moving forward. Slowing down the retreat path right there for quite a few of these bio units. Seems like Banelings were right in the location there to finish off that Thor, but that is obviously a very inefficient move. Yeah, Lambo is flirting with death by constantly moving his army off creep. In positions where I feel like it's very unnecessary. So Oliveira is using that as well to his potential. Now, he is gonna be forced to retreat here, I think. Despite the fact that this fight is once again gonna take place off creep. I mean, there's just not enough Terran army here. Well, if we're gonna sprinkle in more and more reinforcements, a lot of them will end up going down. At the very least, the Medivacs are gonna be able to save some of this. Widowmines? Decently big Widowmine hits, nothing all too crazy though. This position is such a lovely one, yeah. I mean, you could even turn this planetary, or this command center over here, into a planetary, which would shut down the choke point entirely. I don't think that's what he's gonna do, but it is certainly an interesting one. Bottom right hand corner now also scanned here by Oliveira. Sending a Liberator or a Medevac drop or something to some of these outer bases would not be bad whatsoever. There's finally the Ghost Academy, and it's essentially going down at the same time as the Fusion Core. So Oliveira is prioritizing command centers over tech, which is a very ballsy move. I wonder if it's gonna pay off here, because his army is not really looking that strong. Ultra, well, I was gonna say Ultras, but it's just a single Ultra available right now. Nidus Worm also coming up. So I do like the Nidus network here, because again, on this map it can... Yeah, it can feel kind of like a one-dimensional attack, right? Because there's only so many attack paths that you can really take. But I think a Nidus Worm over here, a Nidus Worm over there in the main base would be an amazing move here for the Zerg. Ghosts are coming up right now, though. Big fungal growth. Lovely fungal growth right there by Lambo. A lot of these medevacs also having a hard time retreating, and Corrosive Biles managed to connect. Great combo right there by the Zerg player, and suddenly he's finding even more easy pickings over here. Well, on the side of the Terran, the ghosts are only just now available, but they were not quite in time. GG is simply cold. That was certainly a misread right there by Oliveira. It's Lambo who obtains the victory in a very strange game number 1. Game number 2. We find ourselves on the map Oceanborn. Now, what might be cool to note is that the upcoming Team Liquid map contest has recently been announced. I think you can now submit your maps if you want to. Anyways, long story short, I don't really know the details, but this time around, rather than having different categories for the maps like they usually do, so normally they have like a macro category, a rush category, a standard category, and then also a freestyle category, they've essentially thrown all of those categories out of the window, and they're only doing freestyle. I think that could be really sick. I am certainly going to be keeping a close eye out on this particular map contest. In case you're unfamiliar, usually it determines what future map pools in StarCraft 2 will look like. And the idea of having more freestyle maps is certainly something that I am interested in. I think that Ruset Station probably was one of the maps from the freestyle category. I mean, if you talk to pro gamers, right? They're generally not a huge fan of the funky maps. They don't really enjoy playing on anything that is outside of the quote-unquote ordinary, right? There's gonna be a couple of them, right? You can probably name them off of the top of your head, but generally speaking, most of the guys are comfortable playing on the standard maps. If it was up to pro gamers, we would probably still have maps like Metalopolis, Zelnaga Caverns, Blistering Sands, you know? We would still have the macro maps from Wings of Liberty. Personally, I agree, as a player, yes, it is much easier to play at least 98% of your same strategy on every single map, right? You may have to make a couple of adjustments from macro map to macro map, but nothing all too significant. But as a caster and a viewer and a, you know, an esports fan, I think the freestyle maps are a hell of a lot more interesting, because ultimately, right, it's the best player who ends up winning, and yeah, the macro maps and the standard maps, they allow you to play, well, very mechanically focused. And it turns StarCraft 2 into a bit less of a strategy game, because a lot of games, for example, that you will see guys like Oliveira win are just going to be based off of the fact that his macro mechanics are better than the opponents that he plays against, right? Sarah will win the vast majority of his games, just not so much based off of strategy, but just because he's better at making stuff and spending stuff. Right? It sounds like one of the most basic mechanics of all of StarCraft, and it certainly is, but it turns out mastering it is not that easy. Anyhow, after that explosive game number 1, we've got ourselves game number 2 on Oceanborn. Nothing all too crazy here this time around. No gasless opener at the very least for Lambo. And in the meantime, it's a straight 1-1-1 right here for Oliveira. So he is looking to start putting a lot of pressure on his opponent here very soon. This is one of those builds where you almost have to deal damage on the other side of the map in order to justify it. And interestingly enough, he's not going for any sort of Hellion play. So normally what we would see is the factory switched over with the reactor, right? Or with the barracks rather, and then onto the reactor so you can pump out the Hellions 2 at a time. Instead, we're going to go for 1 Widow Mine, 3 Marines, a Reaper. I mean, this sounds like the beginning of a bad joke. 1 Widow Mine, 1 Reaper, and 3 Marines walk into a bar. Like, this is... This doesn't strike me as a unit composition that's going to be able to deal a lot of damage. What are we going to use the tech lab for? Are we transitioning towards Banshees? No, we're not. This is just straight siege tank. I don't think I like this start here for Oliveira very much. Like, don't get me wrong. He's not going to be able to lose against anything, really. Right? It's not going to be something... Wow, he's even adding on a second barracks, a third barracks as well, before a third command center. He's not going to be able to lose against anything anytime soon. The problem is, he's not going to be able to deal a lot of damage with this attack. At least he shouldn't be able to. Yeah, an Overlord or 2 may very well be the best that he's hoping for. Plus, he doesn't have any economy on the back of this. Now, this is very likely going to turn into a 2-base all-in, which is very uncommon in this matchup. We don't very frequently see 2-base all-ins from Terran against Zerg. If Lambo picks up on this, he's going to be able to counter it pretty easily. So look at the creep spread. Already really lovely. that is gonna make such a big difference when it comes to defending these attacks. Lambo is transitioning towards a nice and quick lair together with a Baneling Nest, so not prioritizing upgrades, and that means that he is gonna be able to get that Baneling speed going here very quickly as well. If he realizes what he's playing against, this should be very straightforward. So what this looks right? What this looks like right here for Lambo is like a standard triple command center opener, because he hasn't really seen that much. This is a very conservative number of units here that Oliveira is showing his opponent, so he is trying to play a bit of a trick. Does this siege tank have any kills? No. So we haven't really seen, I don't think, any links checking the front. I honestly don't think he should be showing the second siege tank and all of that army there. Just enough would be... I mean, killing the fourth base is actually something that I think benefits Lambo here. I mean, he's droning, man. The problem is, Oliveira is making this look like he's playing a normal macro game with 3 CC. So that's why Lambo is expecting a third command center to be flying on over right about right now. He starts up Bane speed. He does have Burrow going. He's going into double upgrades. If he stops droning right here, right now, and he just makes a non-stop army for the foreseeable future, he is gonna be in a fine position to, yeah, defend this attack right here from Oliveira. Again, completely unscouted though. Now finally a Zergling is going across the map. Oof. I mean, he sees one random tank. That might be enough. I think it's important not to be married to this base over here at the bottom of the map, because it's really not that important. I'm actually surprised Oliveira goes in this direction. Now he finally starts up a third command center, but that is like 2 minutes later than like a late third command center, you know? It's very late here. So he needs to justify making all these... I think Lambo should back up. There's zero reason for him to defend this base. Yeah. Wait for Baneling speed. Just make as many units as possible. Add on as many queens as you can. And try to overwhelm this. That's already another Stimpack, by the way, being used. A nice snipe right there on the Medevac, too. I don't know if I like this build here from Oliveira. Now, he's really trying to make use of these siege tank spots, right? We saw the same thing on Ruset Station. I think Lambo does have enough stuff to break this, but he's thinking about going for a counterattack. Where are all the units? We have a lot of money in the bank. I guess he must have missed a few queen injects or something, because he's got nearly 1,000 resources in the bank, which really shouldn't be the case. Obviously, he did lose that hatchery. Making a new hatch over here. I wouldn't mind seeing him just continuously making queens and pulling the new ones to the front after injecting the base that they popped out of. Anyways, nice dancing here so far. But too much money in the bank for sure. Okay, we are gonna try and collapse on top of this. That one Widow Mine, trying to get as many of these units as possible. Banelings over here are connecting, and what is a nice tucked away position here for Oliveira is not really going to work out that well for him. Although he did end up sniping the hatchery here on the right side of the map too. Still though, I think that there's not a whole lot more damage that Oliveira could have done, and a lot of the damage that he did was forcing the Zerg to miss queen injects, which again really shouldn't be happening if Lambo picked up on exactly what he was playing against a little bit sooner. So this is like the best case scenario for Oliveira, and it's still pretty mediocre at best. This particular build, I mean, I mention it all the time, when you can probably copy a build into your own games. I don't recommend copying this one right here from Oliveira. It makes sense, somewhat, but I would solidly rank this build order. If, like, the Terran builds are a tier list, I would be ranking this one in, like, D tier, okay? It has potential, yes, but very likely it's not going to work out that well for you. Well, he's still finding himself now with a supply advantage. Still a lot of money in the bank here for Lambo. Honestly, way too much. Yeah, he's now making a load of hatcheries, 3 of them at once. I think having a macro hatch a little bit earlier would have been super handy too, right? Either extra queens sooner, so he does have 14 here in total, but either extra queens a little bit sooner, or I guess the macro hatchery inside of the main base, or, well, in this particular case, the natural expansion, just to generate that larva a little bit faster. Alrighty. So that's gonna make it easier here for the Zerg from Germany to continuously produce units. Still though, yeah, I feel like this game is kind of slipping out of his hands a little bit. I mean, this harassment here by Oliveira, going after all of these bases, it requires a bit of luck, but it is working out for him. And ultimately, even a D-tier build can apparently work out reasonably well, because it's forcing the Zerg here to make a couple mistakes. Again, medevac drop over at the south. A lovely play here by Oliveira, pushing in on the right side at the same time too. Picks up Liberators in the main base. Zergling counterattack, reasonably well handled it seems. Yeah, not really anything that gets done over there. Hatchery at the 6 o'clock position dies once more. Medevacs over here are healing up the troops. Liberators in the main base, putting in so much work. I mean, I gotta be able to get another queen there too. Oh my god, how did Brenda just die? Look at her. Floating to the surface of Oceanborn, my god. This is one of those tilter games though. Like when you play a game like this, as Lambo, big fungal. Yeah, you can't pick up the units when they are fungal growthed. This is gonna be a bit of a tilter though for Lambo, because he certainly has the skills to shut down this sort of aggression in the earlier stages and now also I guess the mid stages of the game, but he hasn't really been dealing with them as effectively as he could have. Alright, so we're making up a transition right now towards both Infestors as well as Vipers. +3/+2 has been fired up here as well for Oliveira. He is just powering out as many units as possible. Very late 4th command center. I mean, now he kind of needs a 4th command center, because look at the mineral line in the main base. Even the natural expansion, yeah, is going to start running low at this point. Even the 3rd is going to have a couple skinny mineral fields already, man. These guys are on a lunch break, holding hands, don't worry about them. It's a necessity now to go into a 4th command center, or maybe fly the old main on over in another direction. Push up here in the top right-hand corner, though. Okay, looks like Lambo is shutting it down to the best of his abilities, but I just don't know if he's got the numbers for it. He is killing siege tanks. Yeah, okay. Those are expensive. Those are the units that Oliveira really doesn't want to lose. The Marines are relatively easy to replace. Medevacs, likewise, another unit that you really don't want to lose if you have any say in the matter. Trying to target fire down a spore crawler, but not really achieving that much. Funky builds here, though, from Oliveira so far throughout this series. If he ends up winning this game, I wonder what he does in game number 3, because so far these builds have been very far from the ordinary. Like, it made sense on Ruset Station, because it's Ruset Station, but then he does it too on Oceanborn, which is a map, this is a map where he's got a whole lot more practice. Siege tank, firing at whatever he can. The creep spread is still looking really nice, by the way, by Lambo. He should probably remake the 6 o'clock base for like the 7th time, but yeah, I understand that he's a little hesitant. He wants to jump on this right now. There are Widow Mines! Woo! I feel like that Widow Mine on the front right there, he could have done so much work. He tried retargeting it, I believe, but ultimately Lambo did run away in time. Alright, and this position does get broken, but look at the supply count. There's only 58 drones here remaining for Lambo. Finally, as he cleans up all of this aggression, right? This has been going on for like the last 8 minutes. Finally, he cleans it up. Finally, he can breathe and there's nothing really for him to worry about, but he finds himself with a very significant deficit now. I mean, the 4th command center is coming up for Oliveira. Yes, it's very late. Interesting position, by the way. I also expected it, just like this little Zergling, for it to go up over at the top of the map, but not quite the case. Planetary Fortress building here on the left side of the map. Now we're going to add on additional barracks too, so we are going to be rounding up the total to 8, which is a round ending in StarCraft 2, in case you're unfamiliar. But yeah, Lambo decides to tap out. I can't blame him. This fight over here in the middle of the map also not going his way. It's indeed Oliveira who wins game number 2. Alrighty, and that takes us to the final map in this best of 3 series, which will take place on Alcyone. I do have to say though, those are clever builds here from Oliveira, because in my mind, Lambo is really good when the opponent plays a quote-unquote normal game, right? So if you go for the most stock standard builds, that seems to be where Lambo really shines. So in my mind, maybe Oliveira is going for strats over here that there's pretty much no way that Lambo has ever seen them before, because they are so mediocre at best. Although this time around, we do have a standard triple command center opener here. Reactor coming up, we'll probably see a bit of a switcheroo here in just a moment as well with that factory. So we go from a super late 3rd command center in game number 1 and 2, even later in game number 2, I suppose, than in game number 1, which is kind of insane, but now a very fast one. So this I do really like. Are we gonna go just for Hellions? Are we gonna go for a tech lab and then some benchies? I mean, that is the most normal style that you can possibly play. Maybe this is something that Oliveira reserves, right? This is considered to be like the strongest overall build in Terran versus Zerg. Maybe this is something that Oliveira reserves only when he really needs it. Alright, so there's the tech lab, there's the Hellions. No spice this time around, guys. At least not yet. There's still a chance. He could always put down, I don't know, like an armory or something like that. There's still a chance, but this is very much so one of those I don't want to die to anything stupid type of builds. Okay, well that's a funky one. Did we see this recently, actually? Didn't I cast a... Was it Oliveira versus Cerro, actually, that we... Yeah, I actually think it was. Hold up. Ah, I found it. So this is what Oliveira did against Dark. So I casted a series between Oliveira and Dark recently where he went for this exact same setup, and it confused me a little bit because, well, he at the time did go for the cloaking upgrade, so maybe this is going to be a small deviation, but the build confused me a little bit because he decided to go for, like this, you don't need a tech lab in order to produce a Viking, right? So I think he is still going to go for a medevac. All right, I assumed a Banshee on the back of this. What are we doing here, Oliveira? Why did we make the tech lab? Like, why did we make the... And then we... So if you want to deal with a roach-based attack, most roach-based attacks, they hit right around the 5-minute mark. Now, there's no indicator here from Lambo whatsoever that this is going to be a roach-based aggression, and honestly, in the current meta of StarCraft 2, it's not a particularly common style anyways, but we do see it from time to time, especially from players like, for example, Dark. Why did we put a tech lab on there? We literally... Okay, we literally produced a Viking and a medevac. Like, those could have been out sooner. What are you doing, Oliveira? It's okay, it's fine. It's not a big deal. I'm just confused. That's all. Yeah. I mean, we saw this as well from Terrans when the first few games were played, right? On the new multiplayer balance patch, when they were first trying to make cyclones and they were accidentally autopiloting and putting a tech lab on the factory. I could kind of excuse that one. This one's just a bit funky. So, all of these builds, man. He's now adding 4 additional barracks into the mix. So we are just going straight from 1 Rex straight to 5 Rex. Interesting. Tech lab obviously now on the factory, so we can start producing a bunch of siege tanks, but we're not actually producing any siege tanks. I mean, there's one, but now that thing's been on idle for a while, I wouldn't mind maybe seeing combat shields here instead. Anyways. Yeah, so again, maybe a couple question marks as well on Lambo's end, where he's looking at this game, he's like, I don't know, yeah, look at him. He produced spore crawlers, because he assumed as well that this would be some sort of, well, game where you had need for those spores, but not quite the case here. No Liberators going around this time, no Banshees either. We do have the Hellions, though, dropped in the main base, but Lambo all over that. Excellent work. 5 drones end up going down. Yeah, that's actually quite nice there, all things considered for Oliveira. But very quick right there, for sure, on the reaction by Lambo. Okay, medevac now falls. Nice targeting as well on the low HP Hellions, so it takes 3 Hellions to one-shot a drone, so getting rid of that one low HP one right there prevented them from being able to one-shot him. Okay. Yeah, I've got a feeling this is a game where Lambo is feeling a lot more comfortable. So this is nothing all too funky here from the Terran, it's just a little suboptimal is all. Now we have reactors over here. I don't want to be too critical, guys, but we have reactors here on these barracks. Ah, there we go. We're finally making complete use of them. Although, well, if he's not careful, he's gonna hit small supply blocks. Apparently we have a supply block as well right now on the other side of the map though here for Lambo. But the thing is, Lambo is already at 83 workers. I don't think he really wants to go much over that. So as long as he's got the larva available to just pump out, say, like a big round of Hydras. Okay, big round of Zerglings. Not a bad idea. I wouldn't mind seeing him go for a round of Hydras here as well. I mean, he's got 6 of them in the mix right now. Yeah, we have a few more coming up. They're obviously very handy against, like, well, any sort of unit really from the Terran, but you don't want to have too many of them either, especially against like a Widowmine based unit comp. The Hydra is really nice because they can outrange the Widowmines, but Not the case here this time around, as we have a heavy focus on Siege Tank, but Hyderling Bane is still a banger unit composition. Now Lambo really needs to get that money down though. I feel like we've had a bit of a uncharacteristic error. Not just in this particular series here from Lambo, but also in the one that I casted earlier this week, when he went up against Christiana actually in that particular series. We saw him having some larva issues in that series too, where he was doing a good job macro-wise, but he wasn't really able to spend his money as well. And I guess the Swarm House control in that particular series was also, yeah, not my personal favorite. Anyways, 4th Command Center now landed over here on the right side of the map. This is one of those early games here from Oliveira that doesn't really lead to anything. Like, it's leading towards mid-game attacks here eventually, but you may as well open up with something that has a little bit more of a purpose, right? Like a bit more of a timing attack. I guess ultimately we're gonna be able to push right here with the +2 infantry weapons. So I guess this is like a 200 supply timing attack, although that's a bit of a strange thing to call it. He does have one hell of an army right now, and he does have a stellar economy too. And I guess all of the roads eventually do lead here, but it does seem a little bit suboptimal. But then again, that may just be exactly what Ollie here is aiming for. Okay. Good first engagement there. In the meantime, though, big Ling Bane counterattack. And they're going to be able to get rid of 13, now 15 SCVs, as well as the planetary fortress. Still, though, this position over here, it's really killer. We don't have a hive done yet? Ooh, without Vipers, this is going to be a really tricky one to hold. I didn't actually pay super close attention right there to the hive timing, but Lambo needs Vipers in order to shut down all of these siege tanks. It's been 2 factory production for quite some time. We saw a lot of Widow Mines earlier in this series. Now it's going to be tons of siege tanks. He's trying to come in from as many angles as possible, but this is not a very inspiring, set of Zerg units. In the meantime, though, the Lings and Banes on the other side of the map have been destroying the Terran economy, effectively now forcing the Terran here to go for an all-in. This army is going to have to win the game right now for Oliveira. We need to see a lot more Zerg units, though, coming out right here. I mean, still a Viper or 2 would not be a luxury. I understand that they need some time to create energy as well, but there's no denying that they would be super nice with some blinding clouds. Once again, we're trying to jump on all of those siege tanks, but still a tank over there in the back. Now it's 17 confirmed kills, even one of the spore crawlers that was produced in the earlier stage of this game, to counter any sort of non-existent Banshee play. Forced to pull to the front. GG is cold. And it's gonna be our Terran player, Oliveira, who obtains the victory with some of the craziest builds that I've seen in a while.